On the night of February 23, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, climbed into a turquoise Mercury Montego. They were close friends, bound by a shared love for basketball, and they were headed to Chico to watch a college game. They never made it back. Days later, their car was found abandoned on a remote, snow-covered dirt road high in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was 70 miles in the opposite direction of their homes. The car was in perfect working order. It had a quarter tank of gas, no damage, and could have easily been driven out. Yet, the keys were gone, and the 5 men had walked out into a freezing, pitch-black mountain blizzard. What followed would become one of the most baffling, illogical, and deeply unsettling mysteries in American history. A case known as the American Dyatlov Pass. Who were the Yuba County Five? There was Jack Madruga, 30, who owned the turquoise Mercury. Bill Sterling, 29, his close friend. Ted Weiher, 32. Jack Hewitt, 24. And Gary Mathias, 25. 4 of the men had mild intellectual disabilities, but they were high-functioning, held jobs, and lived stable lives. Gary Mathias, a former Army veteran, was different. He suffered from severe schizophrenia, but with his daily medication, his condition was fully controlled. They were a tight-knit group. The next day, they were scheduled to play in a highly anticipated special needs basketball tournament. Their uniforms were laid out on their beds. After the game in Chico ended, they stopped at a local convenience store to buy snacks, snack cakes, chips, and sodas. The clerk remembered them because they arrived just before closing. That was the last time they were seen alive. They should have taken Highway 70 straight south back to Yuba City. It was a simple, flat, 50-minute drive. Instead, they turned east. They drove up into the high, rugged terrain of the Plumas National Forest. Why? The road they took was unpaved, steep, and winding. It was a road that locals avoided in the winter. As they drove higher, the rain turned into a blinding snowstorm. Eventually, the Mercury stopped on a high mountain ridge, deep in snow. But here is the first major detail: the car was not stuck. When police later found it, they started the engine immediately. It had plenty of fuel. 5 grown men could have easily pushed the car backward out of the drift. Instead, they shut off the headlights, locked the doors, took the keys, and walked into the freezing darkness. That same night, a man named Joseph Shans was stranded on the very same road. He had driven up to check on his mountain cabin when his car got stuck. While lying in his car, suffering from an early-stage heart attack, Shans heard voices. He looked out and saw car headlights behind him. He saw a group of men walking through the snow. He screamed for help, but the headlights suddenly went out, and the voices went silent. Later, Sean saw flashlight beams bouncing through the trees, and what he described as a woman holding a baby in the cold. When morning came and the storm cleared, the men were gone. It wasn't until June, when the mountain snow finally began to melt, that forest workers made a chilling discovery. 19 miles away from where the car had been abandoned, deep in the national forest, sat an unheated U.S. Forest Service trailer cabin. Inside, lying on a bunk bed, was the body of Ted Weiher. He was wrapped in 8 thick wool blankets from head to toe. His feet were severely frostbitten and gangrenous. But he hadn't frozen to death immediately. Medical examiners estimated that Ted Weiher had lived inside the dark trailer for up to 13 weeks. He had lost nearly half of his body weight. He had starved to death in the cold. But the trailer was fully stocked. In a shed right next to it was a massive supply of U.S. military rations, enough canned food to keep all 5 men alive for over a year. Only a handful of cans had been opened. The rest were completely untouched, sitting on the shelves. There was matches, paper, and dry wood inside the trailer. But no fire had ever been lit. Why would a man freeze and starve to death over 3 months, surrounded by food, matches, and blankets, without ever lighting a fire or opening the cans? Outside the trailer, the tragedy only deepened. The remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found in the woods, halfway between the car and the cabin. They had succumbed to the cold on that first night. Nearby the trailer, searchers found the bones of young Jack Hewitt. But Gary Mathias was never found. His tennis shoes were left inside the trailer, and his leather boots were gone, meaning Gary had reached the cabin, lived there with Ted, and at some point, walked back out into the wilderness wearing Ted's boots. He vanished into the forest, leaving no trace behind. To this day, the questions remain unanswered. What made 5 stable men drive 70 miles into a dangerous mountain pass in the middle of a blizzard? Were they running from someone? Did they take a wrong turn, get disoriented, and panic? And why, once they found shelter and a year's worth of food, did they choose to starve in the freezing dark? The forest keeps its secrets. And 48 years later, the Yuba County Five remain frozen in time, a tragic, chilling mystery on a dark mountain road.